Care by Mark Sheldon-Stemm. My name is Michael Marr, and I'm the CEO of the Aged Care Development Network. I first met Mark probably about 5 years ago when he was the CEO of the Ukrainian residential aged care facility in Melbourne, Kalinna Care. And I know he's been in the industry for over 20 years at both the CEO and manager level, and now he's mainly doing advisory work to providers right across Australia from his base in WA. A lot of it on the upcoming single standard and what does that mean for residential providers, as it brings a lot of things from home care into the residential space, such as consumer-directed care. So I'll just bring Mark into the conversation and I'll hand over to him. Mark, welcome to today's webinar. This is the second webinar for today. Mark ran one at 10 a.m. for us, and he's now online. Mark, thank you for running this.
Okay, thanks, Michael, and thanks for the introduction, and welcome. We have Bill, Cheryl, Heather, Madeline, and Susan. Thanks for joining us today. Today's presentation is, well, it's titled "Does a Single Standard Mean CDC in Residential Care?" And I think I'm going to talk about that being one of the road signs as far as the roadmap is concerned, because there are other signs that are along the way that have been spoken about for the last 4 years and continue to be ramped up by the government and the department as far as the future is concerned. So I'm going to concentrate on just what the roadmap is talking about, and also then talk about, well, how would CDC actually work in residential care? Because most of the questions I get from people is, oh, well, it just wouldn't possibly work. It works in home care fine, but wouldn't work in residential care. The information I'll give you today is from a background of doing trials and implementation of CDC in residential care facilities. So there are a number of providers around Australia who are already doing this, and they're learning that they're going. So hopefully today you'll be able to get some tips from how they're going and what they're doing. But if you look at the futures can be pretty much looked at in two ways. Either it's great with a great deal of optimism. You're welcome, Susan. A great deal of optimism, or it can be a lot of pessimism. Okay, and I've got to say, at times I run into a lot of pessimism around the industry because of the changes that are constantly being made. All right. Why are the changes being made? I mean, the simple maths, as we all know, people are aging. The numbers of aged people is going to increase over the next 40 odd years, and therefore there's going to be a cost to actually operating aged care. These figures I must update because they're a little bit out of date. They're 2017-18, and I look at the forward estimates by Treasury, and I think by about 2021 the total expenditure gets to nearly $22 billion. So you know, the reason why all this is happening, as we know, is definitely about money. So what's the problem? Okay, this is what I see as being the road for the roadmap. There's the future in the distance. You can see it's nice blue sky, but yet the road's got a few cracks in it. It's a little bit bumpy. The one thing you can't see on there are a series of road signs, and that's the issue, I think, for a lot of aged care providers. They're looking for the road signs. You know, well, tell me what's going to happen. Tell me when it's going to happen. When is the government going to do something? Well, can I tell you, the government's already doing it. And you've got to be able to read the road signs as far as the future is concerned. Money, as we said, no, there isn't enough. We all know about the ACFI freeze. We know about the ACFI game, where providers increase their ACFI and then Treasury freeze it, and then providers increase it and then ACFI freeze it. So that continues on. So what's the solution? Well, obviously, from a government point of view, is they don't want to continually put in for as far as funding is concerned. So the solution obviously is to make people pay. More people pay more money. The more they pay, the more they have a say, which seems pretty reasonable. So this is one of the very first road signs on that journey is exactly, well, there is no more money from the government. It's not a bottomless pit, so therefore people are going to have to pay for their own services. So what does the future hold? So what are the current pressures? What's the aged care roadmap say? What do consumer groups, pressures coming from them, the message from the government and its authorities? And they're giving out messages all the time. And interesting, I met with a group of residential providers earlier this week, and they're telling me that effectively the government is not signed up to the roadmap. It's not part of government policy. I just looked at them in amazement, and I said, have you seen the latest consultation paper that came out last Wednesday, which says, and I think it's 2.4 about the future reforms, is in accordance with the roadmap, the aged care roadmap. This is what will be happening in the future. Now, the department and the government are using the roadmap to basically drive the future reforms. So the messages are there. This is from the ACFA report in 2015. Now, the government's flagged long-term agenda, more choice, less regulation, market-based system, and a removal of restrictions in home care and residential care, which they've already done in home care. Home care is already, nobody has any licenses anymore, consumers, which is causing quite a few issues around the country. So that's a sign which was put up nearly 2 years ago. In fact, just on 2 years ago, to say things are going to change as far as the future is concerned. The other one's obviously the single standard. I'm sorry about the map, it doesn't show up terribly well here, but if you have a look at the actual document, diagram is in the document, and number one is dignity, choice, and independence on behalf, or no autonomy on behalf of the. Thanks, Michael. Now I can't see who's chatting or whatever, but anyway, you can close it back down a little bit lower if you like. It's okay. It's in the centerpiece, and if you read further into the detail of it, the new single standard says 1.3, consumers are able to, or when needed, supported to, B, exercise choice and make decisions about their own care and the way that care and services are delivered. So they make decisions about their care and about the way it is delivered. That's simply another road sign which says CDC. And this is a single standard for home care and residential care. So it doesn't restrict one or the other as such. So there's the second road sign. Another road sign, the review fee, which if you read the review is a rather large academic document, but whilst the academics favour an activity-based funding model, which I don't think Treasury and Finance will ever swallow, there are other options in there. They've given two other options on CDC. So if you read the document, it actually talks about implementing CDC. One of the issues the government has, and I've had discussions with senior bureaucrats about this, is what's the problem with CDC and residential care? From their point of view, they are unsure about what services they should fund. In other words, what should we pay for? What should we give a level, the different levels of care required? I think they're working on that at the moment. When I asked about, well, you do it in home care, how come you can't do it in residential care? The response I got back from the bureaucrat was, well, perhaps we don't fund home care to the level that we should be, which was an interesting comment. So there's another road sign along the way. Okay, the roadmap itself, it talks about portability of funding, seamless movement between home and residential, uncapped supply, remove distinction between home care, residential care, one single system. This is probably the biggest road sign that there is the government is sticking to this, and they're saying, no, this is what's going to happen. So someone will be assessed in the community, they'll own the license or own the funding, and they will move between home care, residential care, whatever. It's interesting in the latest consultation paper, on home care, they're talking about introducing another level above level 4. So there may be a level 5, which may end up by being effectively equivalent to a nursing home. So whether it's funded at 40, 150, 180 a day, who knows? But at least they're making noises about slotting something in which will then allow that seamlessness to occur as such. So there's another roadmap. That one. Okay. And this is from consumers, and I talk to Ian Yates at CODA every now and again. And of course, why should consumers be given choice? Well, they pay more money. At the end of the day, it's cheaper for the government. A market-based system is cheaper. Can I say in home care, and I do quite a bit of work with home care clients, unspent funds in this at the moment in CDC and home care are running somewhere between 15 and 20%. The people are leaving funds unspent, which at the end of the day, the government's likely to look at it and saying, well, perhaps we don't need that level at level 1 or level 2 or level 3 or level 4. And therefore it's cheap. So it's driving a market-based system. They've had choice for most of their lives. Why would they not have choice in the future? And why would people not be accountable and transparent with their funds? I mean, it's just life, is it not? Okay. Please ask questions as we go through. If you've got any questions or you don't agree with what I'm saying or you do agree with what I'm saying, please on the keyboard and let us know. So what's next? Okay, you tell me. So if you've looked at all those road signs, okay, that I just showed you, I mean, what's inevitable? What comes next? Anybody? Susan? Cheryl? Phil? Madeline? Heather? What comes next? Yes, Susan. Challenge. Yeah, it does. It does. There's a lot of challenges. Are any of you in home care? Are any of you in home care? Yes, Bill. No. Madeline? Opportunities, yes. Bill? Oh, I do agency work in residential facilities. Okay. Well, that's going to be very interesting for you, Susan, in terms of the future is concerned. Bill, there's examples of how your choices and what services are how delivered. Yes, I can, Bill. I'll actually go through and give you some hints from the various trials and implementations we've done with CDC. Okay, so that I will show you that. So by the end of the day, as a residential, yeah. See, look, if none of you have been in home care, if you talk to home care providers at the moment, some of them are in complete disarray. Others are doing very well. So, and the change in that has been quite horrific for them. And as I said, some are doing well. Some are just we've got a large provider in Australia who started off with. Oh, okay, Susan, you have home care 3 years ago. Okay, a large provider here in Australia who's gone from 1,000 packages to 100. They've effectively lost most of their clients. They've gone to other providers because of the competitive market. I don't say that to scare you, but I'm just saying that's what's happening in that marketplace. Okay, CDC across home care, CDC regards to residential care, and care provided in an accommodation setting, such. What differences are those who are doing well from the rest? The differences. Well, can I say there are some that I deal with that have increased their packages from 100 to 200 in 3 months. I've had others have gone from 30 to 90, others have gone from 5 to 50, and mainly through their very aggressive marketing as far as going out and finding people, signing them up and taking them away from other providers. So it's a competitive market out there, Bill, I'm afraid. And what the ones that differentiates them, at the end of the day, those who are switched on, I have one client that if they get a call from a prospective client in home care, they with them within an hour, and they've signed them up. So it's no more sitting and waiting for my aged care to give you people. You've got to be out there and actually hit the pavement and do the work. So that's the difference between the ones, and it's not easy. It's not easy. Let's talk about CDC and residential care, and I'll give you some background in terms of what's occurred. We looked at 3 areas: service models, financial models, engagement models. Service models were obviously those, how do you actually deliver the services now, and how would you deliver them under CDC? The financial models actually will link to those service models, and therefore if you produced a model of what I call the traditional model, how would that be funded and how would you account for all the funds? So all the financial models are sitting there. Engagement models are to do with how you engage with your staff, how you engage with your residents and their families, which is also very interesting because in many cases residential aged care providers have never had to engage in this way with their clients or with their residents or their families or their staff for that matter. So this is a completely new world for people as far as that's concerned. Okay. In the trials that we did in CDC and now in implementations we're doing, we tried 3 models. The first model was a traditional model, which was a team approach, task-oriented, built on how people do now. So, okay, you've got your 6 or 7 showers to do in the morning, get to 3 or 4 feeds, you get around and do it. When we did the trials on that, we found that the residents were quite happy with the way the service had changed, but were not given genuine choice. So that they actually weren't allowed to choose a lot of things in terms of they weren't allowed to choose who their carer might be, or choose what time that the carer came, are able to choose what services they want on certain days and so on. So it was it's a very restrictive. So when people say to me, CDC won't work on residential care, Mark, I absolutely agree. As it operates now, it will not work. So therefore we need to change the model. We then went to an overall service model, which is the current structure, but we made changes so we did meet some of those needs, and we made changes to rosters. That worked part of the way, but not all of the way. In the end, we struck a final model, which we called a direct service model, which is effectively based on providing residents with choices about the individuals they wanted to care for them, what they want to do for them, and then within the residential facility, providing coverage, so that everything that happened outside that choice hours or those choice things were covered by people from the general team. And that gave the residents a lot of choice in terms of who they had to care for them, what they did. But also knew that they had the safety if there's something happened to them, then someone would be there. If they had a fall, then there'll be staff there who would assist them. Okay, so it's similar to actually what's occurring in retirement villages now. Is retirement villages, a lot of them actually have home care packages or they provide services along the same lines. And what they're doing is they're offering a 24/7 service. In other words, you have somebody on call. So if you want a nurse at night time, we require a nurse at night time, there'll be a nurse there available for you. Obviously, you get charged for it, and we ran the same financial model. In actual fact, when we ran that financial model, the results were much improved as far as such. So the story from that was, if you try and put CDC into residential care as it's operated now, it won't work. All right, Carol, how will it work when facilities are run as business and often short-staffed? I know most people don't treat agency staff very well. If there's not enough staff, what happens? Well, as far as running a business is concerned, then that goes back to your financial model. So when we did the traditional model, interesting enough, we couldn't account for all the funds. It was really interesting that we timed people as to when they were given services, and we costed people still had money left over. When we went to the direct service model, all the funds are accounted for because you covered at the 24/7 in a fairly bulk charge, and often that would work out to be $40, $50, $60 a day. And then individual carers were basically would service the resident. They would do personal care. They might do some cleaning. Might do a whole lot of other things that for that person that period of time allocated to them, as such. So you know, go to the home care world where people go out in people's homes, then they're there for an hour or 2 hours a day and then leave. Okay. The advantage of being residential care, then you have that overall part. So that makes sense. Thanks, Carol. Stop me from rabbiting. Okay. What do we find? These are some of the questions that we raised when we did the trials. But people understand, which was really interesting, is once they actually had control of the dollars, didn't necessarily want services that they got before. Now, I get a lot of questions from this. I know there's core services that they have to have, and whether it be wound management, medication management, other things like that. They say people have to have them. Okay, well, okay, I mean, that makes sense. And most of the residents will say, yes, you know, I know I have to have my bandage changed. I know all that stuff. But it's the other things that they want to do. And this is basically around food and lifestyle. And that's where the major decisions that they want to make are around lifestyle and food as such. An interesting story where we had, when we did one of the trials, we talked to a lady called Betty, and it showed that she went to bingo every Wednesday, and we said, oh, you really love bingo? She said, no, I actually hate it. The only reason I go is because I'm with other people. It's my chance to socialise with people and so on. In the end, what she wanted to do was actually go out and be amongst people, and she was a churchgoer. She just wanted to go to church, but no one ever asked her. No one, well, because we run bingo every Wednesday. Everyone loves bingo. No, they don't. Everyone doesn't love bingo, I'm afraid. Accommodation, income and costs taken out of the sum, out of the calculation altogether. It's a separate issue, accommodation, income and costs, and that's something which has to be dealt with as far as that's concerned. So we found when we did include it, some people had more money, others had less, because their income and cost of accommodation doesn't always match up with each other. Okay, how information is presented is very important. Look, one of the things we found with the current residential providers when we talk to residents is there's no real expectation shown at the very beginning. And whilst people come in and sign up and come into a facility and they see the facility, the real detail is not dealt with. I have one of the clients who has CDC, and what he does is he sits the people down, and families, residents and families, representatives, and says, look, this is how much money I get from you, this is how much money I get from the government, and this is my charges per hour. So therefore, I can afford to give your parent, or you as a resident, 2.5 direct care hours a day, which is about industry average. All right? They'll say, no, we want more. Well, okay, if you want more, then you're able to purchase more. Okay? So what he does is he has no complaints, because all those expectations about exactly what services will be delivered is fully understood by the resident and all the relatives and the representative. So therefore, there's no comeback saying, oh, I thought you were going to do this, I thought you were going to do it. And now I know, having run aged care facility, residential aged care facility, happens all the time. You know, the expectations of families and residents are different to providers, and they think you can do everything for them. Well, if you sit them down and say, this is what's possible, this is what's not possible, then it clears the air. Real choice for residents. When we did the surveys on the various models, we just found that the traditional model does not give real choice. Offering someone red wine or white wine is not a choice, because they might not want wine at all. The industrial system under CDC is going to be really interesting, I'm afraid. As this comes back to you, Susan, if you're running an agency, is that choice where the resident says, I want Susie or Mary to basically provide my services. And as far as Joan is concerned, I don't want to. And if nobody wants Joan, then Joan doesn't have a job. And that's going to present some interesting, although I've got to say that in the areas we've done the trials implementation, that's been overcome the actual staff probably weren't well liked by the residents, as actually changed their attitudes when they saw what the new world was like. Resident care model versus retirement assisted living. Look, there are several aged care providers who are now saying, I'm not going to build any residential care facilities anymore. I'm going to build a retirement village and assisted living. I'm going to put home care services into there. Therefore, I avoid all of the residential standards until July next year, which it becomes one. But at the same time, I'm able to keep my deferred management fee. I don't take a RAD anymore, or they don't have an option of a RAD or a DAP. They just pay for the unit or whatever. So there's a number of providers who are looking at going down that path, as opposed to, even though it may look like a residential facility, it's operated as a retirement and assisted living under that model as such. Journey ahead. Okay. My guess, I don't know whether I've said this before, but my guess is that city residential care is likely to occur about 2019, 2020 perhaps. 2020 is when it finally gets reformed, and home care packages also is reformed. We read the latest consultation paper about how they are moving that around. So by 2020, the aged care system should pretty much one system, which means the roadmap will pretty much have been encompassed as such. Now, the time to implement CDC, it's about a 2-year journey. The journey ahead is first 6 months is trialing, measuring capability, looking at new systems. How do you want to do it? Not everybody, of all the people we deal with, not everybody does it the same way. They all have their own way of wanting to do it. So that's fine, and you're able to do that. After the trial, people decide which they want to do. They implement systems, engage, and then the next 12 months after that is basically bedding it down. Such. So if you're thinking, well, I want to do CDC in residential care, then you're looking, if you start now, you probably have a good system in place by July 2019. And if the government says you're going to go CDC in 2020, then you'll be well and truly ready as such. So that's just from our experience, just from what we've done, the people we've dealt with, the implementation. Now, I also hear people say, oh, they're not committed to CDC and residential care. Professor Marita McKay from Caltech University did a large trial here in the cultural area about 6 months ago, and presented their report to the minister and the opposition person last month. And both the minister and the person were fully committed to CDC and residential care, and got the bureaucrats together and said, listen to this lady, and this is what we want to do. So look, all the road signs, all the messages is that it's going to occur. So it's a matter of people finding out ways to get there. And there are ways. We have successful people doing this, and it's not impossible. There are challenges, lots of challenges, I can say that. Questions? Queries? Or have I just absolutely dumbfounded you all?
There's one question in there from Bill.
Oh, thanks, John. Okay, you raise an interesting one, Bill, because, okay, the answer is yes. I have signed up about 10 residential care providers in the home care packages over the last 12 months. And the reason is that once you're at home care and you have a carer, when that person comes into a residential facility, you can actually pull that carer in with them, which means that's a real marketing issue in terms of being able to, I've just posted one. Okay, so that's been a real pull for them in their occupancy. One provider that I signed about 6 months ago now has about 10 home care packages in the area, and their occupancy is risen from 95 to 100%. Because what they're finding is that the people who they've got at home care who do require residential care will come because they can bring the carer with them. Right, Susan. Lost audio, sorry. Bill, can you hear me?
No, they can't hear you. They can hear you.
Yeah, okay.
Can't speak. Okay.
So really, Bill, the issue is the answer is yes. Effectively, if you're a residential facility, you should be at home care. You should be at home care. You're right, Susan. And from a marketing perspective, and this is we're dealing with a couple of organisations now that are looking at putting CDC in. They see CDC as a marketing tool because they will be able to say, no, you can keep your carer when you come in here, as such. So yeah, it's a way of having that continuum of care right across. And if you're the organisation that's doing it in the community already, then you're simply just pulling those people into your residential facilities when they require that level of service or care. Other questions?
Mark, I talked about it on the webinar earlier. I'll just mute you.
Hang on.
Where it seems to me as I get around the industry that the government is wanting to move to a silver and gold package level services, but they only want to pay for the bronze level service, and they want providers to have a conversation about if you want some gold, you're going to be paying for it. But most providers I know aren't really set up for that sales kind of conversation. How do you see that playing out in aged care over the next couple of years, please? And I'll just switch back on.
We got audio. Good. The issue with that is the government wants the consumer to choose whether they want bronze, silver or gold, and those that can afford the silver and gold will afford it, and those that can't will be left with the bronze. And you're right, I think the government will eventually only fund the bronze people, and those people who are in the silver or gold will put their own, which means that now it's a matter of a market-driven system where people will be able to choose who they wish to go to and what services they provide. So therefore the changes, and we talked earlier on in the earlier webinar about ACFI and the fact that ACFI is basically almost dead and buried under the CDC. So when it goes, their focus is going to have to go from trying to get your best ACFI to marketing yourself in the community and providing the level of service that people want. And if one of those happens to be the same carer that you've had at home care, well then that's part of it. But I think you find the government will only fund bronze in the future. They're not going to fund the silver and the gold, which raises the question, how I provide special home care ones addressing high turnover staff. Yeah, it's interesting, Bill, because I know of some very large organisations that are having that constant, but also know some other ones who are actually have virtually no turnover in staff because they're getting clients. I think one of the reasons why the turnover is high is because there's so much movement in home care at the moment, and now obviously they're using you a bit, Susan, as agency is concerned. So that's what I think they're filling most of the agency staff and such. But back to the other question that keeps getting raised is, yeah, but how can I have a bronze, a silver and gold person in my facility? How am I going to do that? Well, you do now. I mean, you have people in your facilities that virtually are fully supported, others money. So you provide the services according to each of those individuals. Yeah, it's in a communal setting, but you know, you have to basically run your business model in accordance with that. And in one of the implementations we're doing at the moment, that facility is exactly like that. It has a high number of people who are fully supported, it has a number of people who have some money and a few people who are quite wealthy, and they basically cater for their individual needs. And the people understand. I mean, it's no different the rest of life. You know, we all understand that some people drive these and some people drive, I'm not sure which one I'll pick, Holden or Ford, but you know, that's life. Does that answer your question, Mike? You can turn me off if you like.
Yes, I think it does.
Okay. Question from Carol. What will happen with bringing one standard next year? There's a lot of sick leave residential as well and staff turnover. Okay. What will happen with one standard? If you read the consultation paper the other day, it's due to start in 2018. There will be, I guess, a period of time where people are able to adjust their standards, but those standards will apply as from July next year. So if you don't have some form of real choice that you're giving residents under some sort of CDC model, then you're not going to meet the standard. Simple as that. And you know, it's a matter of the resident says, no, they're not giving me choice. Well, then you don't comply with the standard. For us, a lot of sick leave residential facilities, yes, as well. Staff turnover, I know that. Again, I mean, that has a lot to do with the culture of the organisation, how it's run, the workload, yeah, I would defer that one, Susan, to management, I think. Shift work. Sorry, not sure about the question about shift work, Susan. Cheryl and Madeline, and Helen, any questions? Got some coming. Sorry about the pauses. Yes, Michael.
I think the pauses are part of doing a live webinar, Mark.
I think it is part of doing it.
It's very helpful being able to ask questions directly to you.
Yes. Okay. Let's sort of take bills. What sort of structure do you see the sector evolving in over the next few years? Okay. I think it'll break up into markets, Bill. I think you'll find that facilities in very wealthy areas around Australia will move to a very different model of CDC, where it's very high user pay, but you get high-end service. And there'll be a middle market, which will allow the middle market, and then there will be effectively a sector that will look after the seriously disadvantaged. So I think you'll see the structure of the sector will break up, and there'll be significant differences between providers. They won't all be the same as they are now, I think. And I think that's a natural form of the market, and we're seeing that in home care at the moment too, as such. Heather, where should we start? Then you start with a trial, and I mean I'd be careful here, but effectively we have the only full CDC system in Australia. Nobody else has it, yeah, it's a matter of doing the trial and then seeing what you like and then moving on from there. But you know, if you're interested, I can send some information to Michael. He can send some stuff on. We've got some blurbs about that. Consolidation or fragmentation, no, I think. I don't think you'll see a lot of consolidation. You'll see some consolidation for the fact that in residential care, nearly 620 residential aged care facilities are single standalone facilities around Australia. That might form some consolidation, but a lot of those are in rural areas where people, you know, the larger are not interested in playing in. But I think you'll see it probably more of fragmentation. You'll also see alternatives. You'll see retirement villages become much more residential care facilities in the future with the way the system's going. Cheryl, it'd be interesting to incorporate dementia residents and concessional finances limiting choice. Yes, we had a question about dementia in the last one. Yeah, look, we actually found when you talk about people with real choice and money, we didn't find that it was a real. We didn't find it as a real factor in trials, and we don't find it as a real factor in implementation. Is that people understand their finances and they're actually quite frugal, and even those who are concession, basically, they do get the choices because it's about them choosing what they want. It's not about them choosing everything. It's about them choosing, well, I would prefer this than that, and at least understanding as to what the cost implications are. And we haven't found a great deal. The dementia issue is one that is a challenge because you're going to have someone, either a family member or representative, who can in fact for the person with dementia. Right? So, and that's also worked out quite well too. In fact, better relationships have been formed with the relatives and the representatives in a CDC model because there's a great level of understanding as to what services are provided and how they're provided. So that it deals away with a lot of the I guess the myths that often sit around what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing. Will there be fewer total number of less supervisors in this segment? I think you'll find in the cities, Bill, you probably will, but in rural areas, I just don't see that occurring because the aged care, because the ageing population is going to be more relied upon in rural areas and regional areas. Please do send the information. Okay, I will send it to. Yeah, I'm happy to send it to you as well, Susan. What will happen, Madeline, with unspent funds when, well, that's happening in home care now, is it goes back to the government. So if the resident doesn't spend the funds, then it goes back again, which means you have to make sure you've got a proper financial model that accounts for all the money and is reasonable for the residents. Okay, can I just make a comment about home care? The providers who are losing clients at the moment are often the ones who end up by charging 50% of their package as administration or case management, and the client's only getting half the funds. They're the ones the clients are moving away from. And the same will apply in residential care. If you try and have a large charge, however, you have to be reasonable as far as your charge is concerned, but make sure you account for the funds. But unfortunately, it's government money. If it's unspent, it goes back to them or to the relative or the client in proportion that they contributed, which is what the system is now with home care.
Are there any more questions?
Any other questions, Susan? No.
Oh. Okay.
Okay. Bill or Cheryl or the others? Yeah.
I'll say a big thank you to Mark for his presentation today. As you can see by the comment field, it's generated a lot of questions and conversation and ideas. So thank you, Mark, on behalf of everyone, since I'm the only one with a voice.
You're welcome.
I'll just mute Mark so we get rid of the echo. So, as I said at the start, we're recording this presentation or webinar, and I'll send it out to everyone who was on the webinar, along with Mark's details. So if you want to catch up with him for a one-on-one conversation about your set of circumstances, feel free to do that. And if there's nothing further, I will close the webinar today. Hope everyone's got a lot of information out of it. I'll also send you a link to a webinar we held just yesterday on IT and some of the things you can do there. It's heavily IT focused. It's only 28 minutes though, but it does talk about some of the changes that are available in IT, which you can use to automate a lot of the things that are happening inside your place to help you with your workforce management. Have a great day. Thank you for joining us. See you next time. Bye-bye.